In a lot of ways, I find making pads harder than making basses, because with a bass, you can just make it louder and more. But with a pad, you can make a sound pretty cheesy, pretty fast, but with just a few tweaks. So what I want to do is I want to show you how to make your pads sound a little bit softer without sounding too cheesy. So first, we're going to talk about double Ds for pads. And by that, I mean using a delay and a delay. Not just the delay synced, but the actual sample delay. So I'm going to show you what that is. Now, if you go inside your effects, you're going to find delay and delay synced. The difference is delay is smaller and doesn't have feedback. So this is going to be your normal delay synced, and this is going to be like a sample delay, where it's just going to spit back one small echo pretty quickly after the first. So if I play with this main sound without the other delay, this is what it sounds like. You hear that other echo come very quickly right after. We're going to use that small echo to feed into our main delay, and it's going to make it sound bigger and a little bit more natural. So let's go to an initialized patch and show you what I mean. Now, if we bring up delay with all the settings on standard, you're going to hear a very small echo like right after and even slightly on top of the initial sound. What we want to do is we want to be able to differentiate those two sounds just a little bit. So we bring time on the left, time on the right, all the way over. So it's going to take a little longer to come back. So give it a listen. You can hear two distinct notes. They're not stacked so much on top of each other. So now we're going to use that, and it's going to make this delay even better. Now over here, what we want to do to get that ping pong effect, it's very simple. Just have the left side be half of what the right side is. So if I set this to 2 and 16, that's going to work. Or in the case of what I did in the demo, 3/16 and 6/16. So the left side's going to come in, and the fact that it's doubled on the right means it's going to sound like it's bouncing over to the right. Give it a listen. Now, that sounds okay, but that's just, standard delay effect. Like, there's nothing exciting about that. So adding this delay on top gives it a lot more character. You can hear that quick echo on top of that extra ping pong delay. So that's your double D delay. Now the next trick, I'm going to talk about how I use it in the patch and then give you the basic version. So what I did was I used the first macro to give it a data kind of sound, sounds like it's in a computer. Ooh. Now the macro itself is attached to this stepper, which that stepper is attached to the pitch. So Jesus, what is this little zero? Thank you. So when I have stepper attached to the pitch, if I go ahead and just turn this macro all the way down, it's turning the amp on this stepper all the way down. Turn it all the way up, this amp is all the way up. Now specifically for this patch, I attached it as well to this delay, like we were talking about, and damping on comb filter. So here's why. If I only have this macro attached to pitch filter, listen to what it sounded like. It does get the job done, but it's way too much to really process like a cool sound. It's just a lot going on. So I take off this delay, that extra echo we had talked about earlier, and I damp the comb filter a little bit more so it doesn't sound as rowdy. Now let's talk about it from an initialized patch. Overall, it's a pretty basic trick, so let's start over here with the stepper. Attach your stepper to the main pitch or the main oscillator and bring it up to 12, because that's how we're going to get our pitch flutter. Bam! To make it go really fast, I bring it up to 1 32nd note, and I personally only like using 8 notes, so it's a little bit more manageable. It's not like this for 16 notes. I'm also quickly setting up the other effects so it sounds like it will in the patch. The most important button you're going to hit here is snap to grid. Here's why. If I hit random, watch what it sounds like. It's pretty bad because it's hitting all these notes that are not full semitones. They're just, 3.84 notes above 0, and that's not going to work out. So we want to snap to grid so that every time we pull up a value, it's going to be a whole note. And that's going to work out great when we're dealing with semitones. Now, there's only 4 numbers that I like to use: 0, 4, 5, 7, and 12. And the reason is 0 is unison, 5 is a perfect fourth, 7 is a perfect fifth, and 12 is an octave. And what that means is I could do pretty much any combo of these, and it's going to sound good no matter how I'm using it. So go crazy here, use whatever pattern you want, but that's how you do a pitch flutter. Now to talk about the creepy macro, we're just going to bring up the regular patch because there's kind of a lot going on here. Now for the macro itself, there's only 2 parameters that we're attaching it to, but there are a lot of other factors affecting it. The first parameter we attach it to is the pitch cutoff in the voicing page. Now I set this to 1 so you could hear what it would sound like if you don't affect this value over here. Nice and shitty. So I bring this down to 0.12 for this patch because it's only going to be a very small max over here that we do some detuning. So give it a listen. It's detuning it, but it's not detuning it like this to where it sounds terrible. It's a respectable amount of detuning. So normally in the patch it sounds like this, a very small amount of detuning. This macro is what sets it all the way to 0.12. Now by itself, again, I think that's a pretty standard trick, and people are going to hear it and say, oh, that's detuning. I get it. We don't like that. We want them to not know what the hell's going on. So the other parameter I attach it to was going from parallel to series. And what that means is we're going to get a lot of this filter in to this macro. The goal after the pitch cutoff is to make it sort of distorted a little bit, sound like it's filtered, have a pretty heavy mid-range. And that's why I even have this macro attached to the EQ, because I did want to get just a little more mid-range. So it would be a lot to talk about how we have everything set up to make this sound exactly the way it does, but the overall idea is that if you want to have a macro that's kind of creepy, you want a few things. You want to have it a little bit more detuned and a little bit more distorted and fuzzy. You get that fuzzy, then you get a good creepy macro. And if that didn't really make sense, there's only one thing to try. Just throw this damn macro over here and see if it changes your sound. More often than not, it's going to do something. So that's number 3 for you. As always, the preset's available in the link downstairs. And if you have any questions, leave them here too, and I'll include it into the next video. We'll just knock those out one at a time. See you guys next time.